The standard for this lesson is through numbers and operations in base 10. A focus for this lesson is to use place value understanding and properties of operations to add and subtract. Fluently add and subtract within 100 using strategies based on place value properties of operations and or the relationship between addition and subtraction. The math practices used in this lesson are MP2, which is reasoning, which teaches students that they should be able to break apart, add in, and combine them in different ways to make numbers that are easy to add mentally. And MP3, which is construct arguments. As a result of the lesson, students should understand that when adding two-digit numbers, you can also add an amount to one add-in and subtract the same amount from another add-in to make addition easier. It's important to make sure that all students understand what compensation means. And compensation means breaking apart a number to make adding easier mentally. Normally, you would use some adding blocks that you would find in your classroom, but of course we are not in a classroom, so I am going to be using these mini robin eggs. To start this lesson, I would ask the students to complete this math problem on their whiteboards with their partner. Then I would ask all of the students to raise their hand with their partner and tell me what they got. I would write possible solutions on the whiteboard so we can eliminate the ones that don't make sense. Then I would ask the students if we can eliminate any of these answers that just completely are out of the blue and don't make sense. Next, they would tell me that 81 just completely does not make sense because we're starting with 15 and only adding 8, so that would not make sense. Then they would tell me that 36 wouldn't make sense either because they know that 15 plus 15 equals 30, and we're not adding 15 to 15, we're adding less than 15, so they would know that it has to be under 30, so 36 would also be crossed out. Then we would be left with 24 and 23. So we're going to solve this addition problem using compensation, and we're going to find out which answer it really is. Normally the students would have blocks in their classroom, but since we're using robin eggs, I laid out 15 over here and 8 over here. The next step would be to ask the students how they think we could break apart one of these numbers and make it easier to add. Give them time to think and then ask them. Students will soon realize that breaking the smaller number into two smaller numbers would make it easier to get a solid number that would make it easier to add. We're going to make 15 into 20 using this 8. So we're going to break this apart into 5 and 3. Then we are going to put the 5 with the 15, and that is 20 and 3. And so then students will quickly realize that the answer is 23. Now you're going to show students how to do it on the whiteboard so that they are able to do it soon mentally. So now we know that we have to break apart the number 8. So we're going to break apart that one, and we're going to break it apart into 5 and 3. A way to make it easier for students, you are going to, since we are adding the 5 to the 15, we are going to subtract 5 and add 3. So we are going to add 5 to this one to make 20. Then we can cross this one out, and then all we have to do left is add 20 plus 3. So 20 plus 3 equals 23. The question that always gets students' minds thinking is asking them if they think adding 5 to 15 and taking 5 from 8 is going to change the answer to the problem. The answer is no, because if you add 5 and take away 5, the change is 0. Next good example that we're going to ask the kids to do is 35 plus 7. This is going to be the same process as the last one, where we break apart the smaller number and we make it into two smaller numbers, which makes it easier to add. So we are going to break apart the number 7. So we are going to break this apart into 5 and 2. tip to tell the students is to make the bigger number a multiple of 10, where the second number in the ones place is going to equal 0. So we want to make this 35 equal to 40 because it's the closest one. So once we break this apart into 5 and 2, we are going to want this one to equal 40. So we're going to subtract 5 from the 7 and add 5 to the 35, which equals 40. Then once we do that, we don't have the 5 because the change is equal to 0. And all we have left is the plus 2. So we are going to add 2, which equals 42. It's really good to make it clear to the students that this is just another strategy. And if they don't understand this one, there are plenty more that we're going to learn that they are going to completely get and be able to add in their head with no problem. A lot of children find this strategy a bit confusing. A lot of students find this strategy a bit confusing, so my discussion question would be, if a child was not understanding this strategy, what would you do to help them understand? What I would do is, a lot of students tend to find this strategy a bit confusing. And so my discussion question for you guys is, if a child was not understanding this strategy, then what would you do to help them understand? Something that I would do to help them understand is just using the blocks and helping them do more and more practice problems with it until they are understanding that just because you take something away from one number and add it to the other to make it easier, it's not changing the answer, it's just making it easier to do in their head.